We continue now at the top of Daf Mem Vavam and Beis Mesechet Kesubos. This is Kesubos Daf 46b. On the previous summit, the Gemara brought a statement from Rabbi Yochanan that when it comes to Motzi Shemra, the only time we have a case of Motzi Shemra is a situation where the husband and the wife, they had bia, even if that bia was Shelo Kedarka, but the defamation has to be that she committed adultery with bia Kedarka. But the Gemara says, who would that follow? Because if we're following Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, who says there does have to be an act of bia between the husband and the wife, but Idi v'Idi Kedarka, but both of those act of biyas have to be kedarka. As Rashi over here says, Idi v'Idi kedarka ba'inan kevan damar devarim kichsavan. Since he says that you have to just take the words of the pasuk as they are written. So heichat hakori lo matzasi la besulim. Pasuk says, I didn't find that she was a besula. Clearly they had bia kedarka. Elim kein amar baltia kedarka mitzasiya beula. It's got to be that he's saying I had regular bia with her, and I found that she was a beula. I found that she was not a besula. So therefore, again, what exactly did Rabbi Yochanan mean? And so the Gemara therefore changes what Rabbi Yochanan said. Elo shalach Rav Kahana mishmei Rabbi Yochanan. Rather, Rav Kahana sent in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. The statement should be as follows: Eino chayiv. When it comes to Motzi Shemra, he's not chayiv ad sheyivol kedarka until he has bia kedarka. V'yotzi Shemra kedarka. And also he defames her and says that she committed adultery with bia kedarka. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Ha'av zakoi bevito bekidusha bekesef b'shtaru v'viyah. When it comes to the father, he has a zechus in his daughter in terms of the kiddushin, in reference to the money of the kiddushin, or let's say it's a shtar kiddushin, or in reference to the biyah, to the act of relations that's involved in the kiddushin. Rashi over here explains, Ha'av zakoi bevito bekatanos uvenaros. First of all, we're talking about the daughter who is either a katana, she is a minor, or she is a nara. In those situations, bekidusha bekesef, number one, he gets the kesef. Shekesef kiddusha shalom, meaning let's say there was money that was given to betroth her, that money goes to the father. Uvishtara, let's say a document is used to have the kiddushin, shem kibel shtar erisin. What that means is that the father can be the one to receive the shtar erisin, aleh for her, harezu mukudeshes, and that's going to make her that she is betrothed, that's going to make her in arusa. And bebia, what does it mean? The act of relations means to say, rashoy limos or lebia l'shem kiddushin. The father has the right to give her over to another man for bia, for the sake of kiddushin. And the Mishnah continues, furthermore, the father, zakoi b'mitziyasa, he merits to get whatever she finds goes to him. Uvemaisa yadeh, and also her earnings, they also go to him. Uvahafaras nadorah, he has the ability to annul her vows. Umekabel eskita, and he's also the one who receives her divorce document in a situation of divorce. Rashi over here says, Umekabel eskita, im nisgarsha mino erisin. Let's say we have a situation where she was divorced from erisin. It has to be from the betrothal stage. V'kodem shabagra, and also it has to be before she's a bogeres, before she's a full adult. Aval bagra, but if she would become a bogeres, o nisis, or let's say there was already a nisu and a marriage, shuvein lo rishus, but at that point in time he has no rishus over her, and in that situation he would not be the one to accept her get. And the Mishnah continues, Ve'eno ochel peros b'chayah. Furthermore, he's not allowed to eat the fruits in her lifetime. Rashi over here says, Ve'eno ochel peros b'chayah, im naflu la karkos b'yerusha mi beis imo. Let's say she gets land as an inheritance from the family of her, from her mother's side of the family. So eino via ochel peros sehen. So the father there is not allowed to eat the fruits of that land. Ela osen la skula. Rather, that is protected. It is made for her behalf. Now that's even though the father might inherit his daughter, so he might get that land later on as an inheritance. However, again, nevertheless, he's not going to be able to have the fruits of that land while she is alive. Now, Nizis, let's say she gets married. So, Yeser Olav Habal, the husband actually has more rights and responsibilities to the wife than the father has in the following way. Sha'ocha Peros B'chayah, number one, he's allowed to have the fruits in her lifetime. V'chayev b'mizonoseh uvepirkona ukvuras. And also, the husband is chayev to sustain her, to give her mizonos, to give her food, to redeem her, let's say she's held captive, and he also has to pay for her burial, for her funeral. We'll take a look at Rashi over here. First of all, B'chayeha, again it said that the father does not get the fruits in her lifetime. Elim kain mesav hu yarsha, again like we said, if she dies, then he inherits her, that's a different story, but in her lifetime he doesn't get the peiros. Yeser olav habal, the husband is more than the father. Shu zocha gam b'chol hashinuyim l'ma'ala v'ochel peiros minachasim shenaflu la b'yerusha mishenisas lo. He gets everything that was listed above, plus he also does get the fruits from any property which she inherits from after the time of the marriage. V'chayev b'mizonoseh uv'pirkona, he has to give her mizonos and he has to redeem her. Im nishbis, if she's held captive, shu tanai bezdin, that's one of the conditions of the bezdin in the marriage. Kidetanan b'masisin, that is taught in the Mishnah. B'kvuras, and he also has to take care of her burial. De'amrina l'kamon, we're going to say later on, kivurasa tachas ksubasa, that her burial is in lieu of the ksuba, meaning to say, shechnisa lo mi beis avia, she brings in property from her father's house into the marriage, and in exchange for that, he has to bury her. V'hu yarsha b'misasa, he inherits her when she dies. So again, in exchange for that fact that he inherits her, so he has to take care of her burial. And the Gemara and the Mishnah continues. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Afilu ani should be Yisrael, even the poorest person in Klal Yisrael, lo yivchos mishnei chalilin u'mekonenes. He should not have less at his funeral than 2 flutes and a mekonenes. That's a woman who laments, who does the hesped. As Rashi over here says, mishnei chalilin lahesped. There's a minimum amount that should be at the funeral." And the Gemara says, "Bekesef menolan." How do we know that when it comes to kiddushin that is done with kesef, that the money goes to the father? Amar Rav Yehuda says, Amar Kra, the pasuk says, "V'yotza chinam ein kasef." It says by an amma ivriya, that's by a Jewish maidservant. It says that she goes free. This is talking about she goes free when she becomes a nara, and there is no money. And so the Gemara says, "Ein kesef la'adon zeh." There's no money that goes to this master. However, v'yesh kesef la'adon acher. However, there is a situation where kesef goes to a different master of the girls. Umanu, and what situation? Who is that? Avia, that is her father. In other words, the adon by an amma ivriya does not receive the money, and we learn out from there by kesef kiddushin, the money does go to a different adon, to the father. Rashi over here says, "Ein kesef ba'amma ivriya ksiv uvikiddushin parach haimi boile legufe." The Gemara asks over there in kiddushin, don't we need this pasuk for itself? How could we learn out to the situation of kiddushin? Don't we need the pasuk for its own context? And the Gemara again says, "Ein kesef la'adon zeh b'yotza me'reshuso b'simone naras." When an amma ivriya leaves her master, when she becomes a nara, k'di alfinan b'kiddushin deviyotza b'simone mishtoi kra. That's what it says in kiddushin. We're talking about when she leaves at that age, when she is a nara, when she has simonim. Aval yesh kesef la'adon acher k'sheyotza me'reshuso. There is money that goes to a different master when she leaves his reshus. Umanu av, and that's talking about the father. Shein adon labas Yisrael elo avia chutz mizeh shenimkar alo. That's the only other situation where a Jewish girl has a master, so to speak, is her father. And again, so that's how we learn out that the money goes to her father. And the Gemara says, "Ve'emu l'dida," but why don't we say that the money actually goes to her? And so the Gemara says, "Hashta avia mekabel kiddusha." Well, we know that her father is the one that receives, that accepts the money of that accepts the kiddushin. Techsiv es biti nasati li shazeh. He says, "I gave my daughter over to this man." So shakla kaspa, she should be the one that takes the money. That doesn't make sense. Rashi over here says, "Ve'emu l'didah have ukra ki asa lashminan asa she niknis labal b'kiddushay kasef." Maybe the pasuk simply means that she's acquired to the husband with this kiddushin, with this money of kiddushin. V'achi tidrashay ein kasef b'yitziyazu. Just understand the pasuk as follows: there's no money involved when the amma ivriya leaves her adon. Aval yesh kasef b'yitziyah acheres, but there is kasef involved in a different kind of yitziyah. U'le'olam didah have, and again, maybe that money goes to her. And the Gemara again answers, no, that doesn't make sense. If it's the father that's giving her over for kiddushin, he should be the one that receives the money. And the Gemara says, "V'yemahani mili katana deles la yad," but maybe that's only true by a katana, by a minor. She doesn't have a yad, she doesn't have a hand to really accept the money of the kiddushin, so it goes to her father. Avol nara deis la yad, but a nara who has a yad, ihi tekadish nafsha, she should be able to give herself away to kiddushin. V'i teshkol kaspa, and she should be able to take the money. Rashi over here says, "V'yemahani mili da'amra Torah biti nasati shabiyado nisinasa." Maybe it's only by a minor where the Torah says, "I gave over my daughter." Katana deles la yad lakadesh atzma. Katana doesn't have the hand to be able to give herself over for kiddushin. V'avagav degave motzi shemra ksiv. And now, even though this pasuk is written by motzi shemra, so how could we say it's talking about a katana? Vahi nara have. We know that by motzi shemra we're talking about a nara. Dilma hachi kamra. But maybe the pasuk means very simply, as biti nasati bikatanusa. I gave her away to be for marriage when she was a minor. V'aton nara. And right now she's a nara. Right now, when she's being accused, so to speak, in this whole situation of motzi shemra, she is a nara. But again, maybe the pasuk in terms of giving the daughter away for kiddushin is talking about when she was a minor. So again, maybe a nara that has a yad, she should be able to do the kiddushin and take the money. And to that the Gemara says, Amar Kra, the pasuk says, Binureha beis avia. The pasuk says, when she is a nara, she is in the house of her father. Kol shavach neurim liavia. We understand that to mean that all of the profit that happens when she's a nara goes to her father, and that includes the kesef kiddushin. And the Gemara says, but 1 second. What about that which Rav Huna says in the name of Rav? How do we know that the earnings of a daughter go to her father? Shenamar, like the pasuk says, it says that a man sells his daughter as a servant. So we make a comparison. Just like a maidservant, her earnings go to her master. So to a daughter, her earnings go to her father. Now, if that pasuk teaches us that the earnings of the daughter go to her father, so therefore, so lamali, what do we need that pasuk for? We should learn it out from the pasuk you just quoted of Binureh Beisavia, that all of the money, all of the profit of a girl when she's a nara goes to her father. And so the Gemara says, you're right, that really has nothing to do with what Binureh Beisavia means. Elohahu ba'afaras nadarim hu dechsiv. Rather, that pasuk of Binureh Beisavia is really talking about hafaras nadarim. We've mentioned this earlier. It simply means that a girl, when she's a nara, her father has the ability to annul her vows, and therefore that cannot be a source for this idea that the money of the kiddushin by a nara goes to the father. And maybe you'll suggest, well, let's just learn out from the darim. We'll learn out just like he can annul her vows, so too he gets the money. Mamona meisura lo yalfin, and we don't learn mammon from Isser. We can't learn money from situations of Isser like neder. V'chiteima neilaf miknas, and maybe you'll suggest let's learn it out from the knas. We know that the fines that are involved in onus and mefata, they go to the father, so maybe therefore we should understand the mammon of kedushin as well. Mamona miknas lo yalfin, and we can't learn out mammon from knas, says the Gemara. V'chiteima neilaf mi boshes upagam, and maybe you'll suggest, well, there are other payments that happen when a woman is raped or seduced. There's payments of embarrassment, there's payments of a lessening of her value. Learn out from that, just like those payments go to the father, so to the Kesef Kiddushin. And to that the Gemara says, Shani, Boshes upagam, diyavion nami shayach be. When it comes to Boshes and Pagam, the humiliation and the payment for the lessening of value, the father is also shayach, he's also relevant to those payments, and so therefore you can't necessarily connect that to the Kesef Kiddushin. Rashi over here says, Shayach, but biyadu lito mamon ulevaisha. For example, he has the ability to take money, to get paid money, and then humiliate her. But he can humiliate her by giving her over to kiddushin for bia, to somebody who's disgusting, to somebody who has boils. So he has that control, so to speak, and therefore it makes sense he should get those payments of the boshes and the pagam. But that's no proof to the kesef kiddushin. And so finally, the Gemara says, Ella rather mistabra, it makes sense to say that the kesef kiddushin goes to the father. Because when we're excluding, remember we're saying over here in the pasuk that it's different. The yitzia when she leaves the adon when she's a maidservant is different than when she's leaving the father, and it should be something similar that we are excluding over here. There has to be a certain similarity between the case of the maidservant leaving the adon and the case of the woman of the kiddushin, the money going to the father. Rashi over here explains what we mean by this similarity. Ela kiporacht emo ledida. When you ask that if she's a nara, the money should go to her, hachi tashani, here's how you answer it. Mistabra ki kamemayit kra yitziyasa mirishasab bekidushin mitoras yitziyasa mirishas adon besimanim. When we are making this exclusion and saying she leaves the rishus of the father with kesef kiddushin, and we're learning an exclusion, we're learning a miyut from the case where she leaves the adon when she has simanim, when she reaches the signs of maturity. So Rashi says, Yitzia dechivasa kamemayit, we're excluding a similar kind of Yitzia, meaning to say as follows. Ma kesef the Yitzias adon, just like when it comes to the money when she leaves her master, ihave hasam kesef, if there was money involved there, which there isn't, but if there was, the adon sheyotze mimenu boy mahavid, that money should go to the master. If she's leaving the master, he should be compensated. Bepidyon gerona de megarasimo, he should get some kind of redemption because she's no longer serving him, so that money, that so to speak, that value she's no longer giving would go to him. V'yotzav hamoser noseneslo, she should go free, and whatever remains in terms of the money, whatever it cost him to purchase her, he should get that remaining money. So avki kamar nami yesh kesef yitzia acheres da'adon sheyotza mimenu boy lemahave. So too that other money that we're talking about, which we're saying works differently where there is money involved by kiddushin, that should go again to the master, to him, to the father, v'lo ladida, and not to her. So that's the source that the money goes to the father, even by that case, even by the case of a nara. If we said it went to her, it wouldn't be similar to the case of the adon. And that's how Rav Achai understands this line in the Gemara. Rashi says, now I heard a different explanation in the Gemara. It means more simply, that it's Yitzia Dechavasa, because just like over there she goes free from the adon as a nara, so too over here we're talking about a nara. But Rashi isn't sure about that. Vakashali, that's difficult to me. Akati ema l'dida. Still, it could be talking about a nara, but maybe the money goes to her. You still need some kind of logic to understand why the money doesn't go to her. Rashi says in Mesechet Kiddushin, I did explain that which I heard, but it was a difficult explanation which I offered, but I did offer an explanation for that explanation of the Gemara which I heard. But the Gemara continues, but still these two Yitzias are not really comparable. You can't compare a situation where she leaves the father and has a Kiddushin to a situation where she leaves the Adon. Why? Because Hasam over there, Gabe Adon, by the master, Nafkala Mirashuse Lagamri, when she's leaving, she's fully leaving his Rishus. But Yitzia Da'av, Akati Mechsra Mesir L'chuppah, when she leaves the father for Kiddushin, she hasn't totally left yet. She still needs to be given over for the Chuppah. She still needs to go under the wedding canopy and have Nisuin to fully leave the Rishus of the Av. And the Gemara says, no, mehafaras nadar mio nafkala mirashuse. When it comes to the idea that he can annul her vows, she actually has left his rishus. So there is an element of leaving his rishus even in the eris and in the kedushin. The Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, nara hamaurasa. Once a nara is maurasa, once she has entered the stage of erisin, avia ubala mefiran lanadara. Her father and her husband are now able to annul her vows. So that essentially is a certain way of leaving his rishus. Rashi over here says, nafkala mirashuse da'arachshav he mefer levado. Until now, he was the only one who could annul her vows. Ve'atam mefer b'shutfas imbala. Now he has to annul the vows in partnership together with her husband. So that is considered a leaving of his rishus. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said shtar ubia. Also, when it comes to shtar and bia, the father has rishus over her menol. And how do we know that? Amar Kra, because the pasuk says v'haisel lishacher. It says she will be to another man. That talks about the kedushin. Iskish havayas la'adadi. This is a comparison of the various forms of having kedushin. They're all compared to one another. Rashi over here says, how do we know that by shtar and bia the father has this ability to give her over to Kiddushin against her will? The various kinds of Kiddushins are compared to one another. Just like Kesef is in the hands of her father, so too shtar and bia is in the hands of her father. The fact that Kiddushin works with shtar and bia, that is learned out in Kiddushin. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Zakoi b'mitziyasa, he merits to get that which she finds. It goes to her father. We'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Mem Zayin Amud Aleph.